The dragon egg nobody could hatch for 500 years cracked when the human janitor ate lunch near it. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the grand halls of the Galactic Xenobiological Repository, amid the gleam of advanced technology and the hushed conversations of the universe's most brilliant minds, a simple human janitor named Ethan Cole pushed his cleaning cart past the galaxy's most perplexing mystery. The repository hung in orbit around the neutral planet Tertia, a massive structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields that housed the rarest biological specimens from across the known universe. Built as a collaborative effort between 17 advanced species, it served as both a research facility and a museum of galactic wonders. The central atrium stretched nearly a kilometer high, with specimen halls branching out like the spokes of a wheel. Soft blue lighting illuminated the pristine white corridors, designed to accommodate beings of all physiologies. Ethan had been working at the repository for just under a standard galactic year. At 34, he was unremarkable by human standards, average height, with sandy brown hair that perpetually needed a trim and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. He'd left his home planet seeking adventure, or at least something different from the corporate cubicles that had slowly drained his spirit for a decade. The janitorial position wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to send credits home to his aging parents, and more importantly, it gave him a front-row seat to the wonders of the universe. "Morning, Doc Xerix," Ethan called out as he maneuvered his cart around a tall, spindly researcher from the Velodan system. The four-armed scientist barely acknowledged him with a distracted wave of one of his upper limbs, his compound eyes fixed on a data tablet. Ethan didn't take it personally. The scientists rarely noticed the maintenance staff, a universal constant that apparently transcended species and star systems. He continued his rounds, whistling softly as he made his way towards Section 7C, which housed what the staff called the Puzzle Wing, a collection of biological mysteries that had confounded researchers for generations. And at the center of the Puzzle Wing, in a climate-controlled chamber behind layers of security and observation equipment, sat the dragon egg. It wasn't actually from a dragon, of course. Dragon was just the closest Earth mythology that approximated the Firelian apex predator, a species believed extinct for over 2 millennia. The last egg had been discovered 500 years ago during an archaeological excavation of their home planet, Firel, which had been rendered uninhabitable by a supernova in its solar system. Since then, the egg had been in the possession of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, passed from one research institute to another as each failed to awaken the life that scans confirmed still lay dormant inside. As Ethan approached the observation chamber, he noticed an unusual flurry of activity. A delegation of Exorians, a race of crystalline beings known for their expertise in energy manipulation, surrounded the egg's containment field, their translucent bodies glowing with colors that shifted from deep purple to agitated red. 30% increase in thermal gradient, one of them announced, their voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. Prepare for the resonance cascade. Ethan paused, leaning on his mop as he watched through the transparent wall. He'd become something of an unofficial expert on the egg over the past year, having cleaned the observation deck during countless failed experiments. He knew the Exorians were the 15th species to attempt hatching the egg since its discovery, and the 7th just in his time at the repository. Dr. Kella Vox, the repository's director, stood nearby, her scaled tail twitching with anticipation. A draconian herself, though from a species completely unrelated to the Firelians, Dr. Vox had made the egg her personal mission. Rumor had it she'd spent 60 years studying nothing else. "Begin the harmonic sequence," commanded the lead Exorian, whose crystal body was larger and more intricately faceted than the others. The Exorians arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the egg's pedestal, their bodies vibrating at frequencies Ethan could feel in his teeth. The egg itself was massive, nearly a meter tall, with a shell that resembled polished obsidian embedded with swirls of what looked like molten gold. Despite its imposing appearance, Ethan had always thought it seemed somehow lonely. The harmonics rose to a pitch that made Ethan wince. The Exorians were literally putting their bodies on the line. If they vibrated at those frequencies too long, they risked structural fracturing. After 5 intense minutes, they abruptly stopped. "No response," announced the lead Exorian, disappointment evident despite their alien physiology. "The shell integrity remains unchanged." Dr. Vox's shoulders slumped, the scales along her neck dulling from vibrant green to a muted gray. "Thank you for your efforts, Delegation Prism. Please take time to recover. We can attempt the alternative frequency tomorrow." The Exorians filed out, their usual crystalline sparkle dimmed. Dr. Vox remained, staring at the egg with an expression Ethan recognized despite her alien features. It was the face of someone confronting a lifetime of failure. "Tough break, Doc," Ethan said softly as he began mopping nearby. Dr. Vox startled, apparently noticing him for the first time. "Oh, maintenance staff." She blinked her vertical eyelids. "Yes, it is frustrating. 5 centuries of the most advanced techniques across multiple civilizations, and that shell remains as impenetrable as the day it was found." Ethan nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes the simplest puzzles are the hardest to solve." "Indeed," she replied, giving him a curious look. "You're the human, correct?" "Ethan, that's me," he confirmed, surprised she knew his name. "Humans have only been part of the Galactic Assembly for 12 years. Your species is still quite the curiosity." Her head tilted slightly. "You've been watching the attempts on the egg." It wasn't a question, but Ethan felt compelled to explain. "It's interesting. Back on Earth, we have birds that sit on their eggs to keep them warm. Some reptiles bury them in sand. Simple, but effective. We've tried thermal regulation in every conceivable pattern," Dr. Vox said, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "Geological pressure simulation, gravitational fluctuations, radiation exposure within safe limits, biochemical triggers. Nothing initiates the hatching sequence." "Maybe it's just not ready," Ethan suggested with a shrug. Dr. Vox's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. "The egg has been dormant for over 2,000 years, with 5 centuries of active attempts to stimulate hatching. If readiness were the factor, I believe we've given it ample time." She sighed, a surprisingly human sound. "The truth is, we may be missing some crucial environmental factor that existed on Firel before its destruction. Something we can't replicate because we don't know to look for it." Ethan finished his mopping and prepared to move on. "Well, good luck, Document. I'm rooting for you, and whatever's in there." Dr. Vox nodded absently, already returning to her data tablet. Ethan continued his rounds, but found himself thinking about the egg throughout his shift. There was something almost tragic about it, the last of its kind, trapped in a state of suspended potential, surrounded by beings that wanted to help but couldn't figure out how. The next day, Ethan's shift was adjusted to cover the afternoon cleaning rotation in the puzzle wing. When he arrived, the Exorians were gone, and the observation chamber was empty except for the egg in its containment field. According to the schedule on his work tablet, the next research team, a group of gaseous entities from the Nebula Collective, wouldn't arrive until the following morning. Ethan went about his duties, cleaning the already spotless floors and walls of the observation deck. As midday approached, his stomach growled, reminding him it was time for lunch. Normally, he would have returned to the staff break room, but the puzzle wing was far from the central hub, and he was running behind schedule. Instead, he decided to eat right there on the observation deck. Settling down on a bench facing the containment chamber, Ethan unpacked his lunch bag. He'd prepared it himself that morning, a ham and cheese sandwich on rye bread, an apple, and a bag of spicy corn chips that cost him a week's worth of dessert rations to import from Earth. The final touch was a small bottle of hot sauce that he applied liberally to his sandwich. It was a simple meal, but one that reminded him of home. As he bit into his sandwich, his eyes wandered to the egg. In the quiet of the empty chamber, with just the soft hum of the containment field between them, it seemed less like a scientific curiosity and more like like an egg, a shell housing something that, against all odds, was still alive after millennia of waiting. "Just you and me today, buddy," Ethan said between bites. "Hope you don't mind the company." He continued eating, occasionally glancing at his tablet to check sports scores from Earth. The Cleveland Browns were still terrible, even across interstellar distances. Some things never changed. He opened his bag of chips, the seal breaking with a soft pop, releasing the distinctive aroma of artificial cheese and chili spices into the air. That's when he heard it, a faint but distinct sound from within the containment field. A tap. Ethan froze, a chip halfway to his mouth. He stared at the egg, wondering if he'd imagined it. 10 seconds passed. 20. He was about to resume eating when he heard it again. Tap. Tap. His heart racing. Ethan set down his lunch and approached the containment field's observation window. The egg looked the same as always, its obsidian surface reflecting the chamber's lights. But as he watched, a tiny, web-like crack appeared near the top, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. "No way," Ethan whispered. He fumbled for his comm unit, ready to alert Dr. Vox, when a more substantial crack appeared with an audible snap that actually made the containment field flicker. Alarms immediately began blaring throughout the wing. The egg, apparently responding to the noise, cracked further, more rapidly now, the golden swirls within its shell beginning to glow with increasing intensity. Ethan backed away, unsure whether to flee or stay. Before he could decide, the chamber doors hissed open, and Dr. Vox burst in, followed by a security team. "What happened? What did you do?" she demanded, her scales flushed a brilliant crimson. "Nothing," Ethan protested, raising his hands. "I was just eating lunch, and it started cracking on its own." Dr. Vox looked from Ethan to the egg, which continued to fracture, golden light now pouring from the widening fissures. "Impossible," she whispered. After 5 centuries of the most sophisticated, she cut herself off, turning to the security team. "Initiate emergency containment protocols. Alert the Xenobiological Response Unit. And someone get the human's lunch analyzed immediately." One of the security officers, a hulking insectoid, reached for Ethan's food with a specialized collection tool. Meanwhile, the egg's cracks had formed a complete network across its surface, the shell now seeming to pulse with inner light. "Should we evacuate the wing, Director?" asked the security chief, a humanoid with metallic skin. Dr. Vox hesitated, her scientific curiosity visibly warring with protocol. "No. Seal this chamber only. I need to observe this." She turned to Ethan. "You, human, exactly what were you eating?" "Just a sandwich, an apple, and some chips," Ethan answered, still staring at the egg in disbelief. "Oh, and hot sauce. Dave's insanity sauce from Earth." "Dave's insanity," Dr. Vox repeated slowly, as if the words themselves might contain the answer to the 500-year-old mystery. "What does this substance contain?" Before Ethan could answer, a large piece of the egg's shell broke free and clattered to the floor of the containment field. Everyone in the room froze as a small, clawed limb, gleaming like burnished copper in the chamber's lights, pushed through the opening. "It's hatching," Dr. Vox breathed, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. "By the cosmic core, it's actually hatching." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. More researchers rushed in, setting up additional monitoring equipment as the creature inside the egg continued to break free. Ethan found himself pushed to the back of the room, forgotten in the excitement, which was fine by him. He watched in awe as, piece by piece, the obsidian shell fell away, revealing glimpses of the being within, scales that shifted from copper to gold, small but wickedly sharp claws, and a sinuous body that moved with surprising strength. Finally, with a sound like breaking glass, the remaining shell collapsed, and the Firelian infant emerged fully into view. It was beautiful, about the size of a house cat, with a serpentine body covered in metallic scales for clawed limbs and a wedge-shaped head adorned with small, backward-curving horns. A pair of membranous wings, still damp from the egg, unfurled slowly from its back. Its eyes opened, vertical pupils and irises the color of amber, and it surveyed the room with unmistakable intelligence. The researchers were beside themselves, speaking rapidly in various languages as their instruments recorded every detail. Dr. Vox approached the containment field, her expression reverent. "A female," she announced after studying the creature for a moment. "A female Firelian." The genetic material we recovered from archaeological sites suggested they were sexually dimorphic, but to see it confirmed. She trailed off, overcome with emotion. The infant Firelian tilted her head, studying Dr. Vox with equal curiosity. Then, unexpectedly, she turned away from the renowned xenobiologist and fixed her gaze directly on Ethan, still standing at the back of the room. A strange sensation washed over Ethan, a warmth that started in his mind and spread throughout his body, accompanied by a series of impressions that weren't quite words but conveyed meaning nonetheless. Gratitude, recognition, and hunger. Dr. Vox?" Ethan called out, his voice strained. "I think she's trying to communicate with me." Dr. Vox spun to face him, her surprise evident. "That's impossible." Firelians were believed to possess telepathic abilities, but only with their own kind. Even if that ability manifested this early, which our models didn't predict, she shouldn't be able to establish contact with a completely unrelated species. Yet as Ethan locked eyes with the small dragon-like creature, the connection was undeniable. The mental impressions grew stronger, more focused. Images flashed through his mind. His lunch, particularly the spicy chips and hot sauce, seen from outside his own perspective. "She wants my food," Ethan said with certainty. "Specifically the spicy stuff." "Ridiculous," scoffed one of the researchers, a floating orb of purple energy. "The creature has just emerged from a state of suspended animation that lasted millennia. Its digestive system wouldn't even be functional yet, let alone capable of processing alien food." The infant Firelian hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve, and the orb researcher bobbled in alarm. "I don't think she agrees with your assessment," Ethan said, unable to suppress a small smile. The mental connection continued, and he got the distinct impression the creature was becoming impatient. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but she hatched while I was eating. Maybe there's a connection?" Dr. Vox, to her credit, was willing to consider the possibility. "The timing is certainly suggestive. What exactly is in this Dave's insanity sauce?" "Peppers, mostly. Really hot ones. Capsaicin. Some vinegar, salt, garlic." Ethan listed the ingredients he could remember from the label. "Capsaicin," Dr. Vox repeated thoughtfully. "A chemical compound that stimulates heat receptors. Painful to many species." She turned to a nearby researcher. "Run a comparative analysis between capsaicin and the atmospheric composition of pre-supernova firol." While they worked, the infant Firelian continued to stare at Ethan, the mental connection between them growing steadily stronger. He could sense her frustration mounting, along with something else, a memory that wasn't his own. Heat. Intense, searing heat, but comfortable somehow. "Necessary," Dr. Vox called the researcher who'd been analyzing the data. "Preliminary results show significant traces of capsaicinoid-like compounds in the atmospheric samples from the Firelian archaeological record. They appear to have evolved on a planet with naturally occurring airborne irritants similar to Earth's capsaicin." "That can't be a coincidence," Ethan said, stepping forward. "She needs heat, not just temperature, but the chemical sensation of heat. That's why she responded to my lunch." The hot sauce triggered something in her development. Dr. Vox's eyes widened. Of course, the missing environmental factor. Firol was a volcanic world with constant eruptions releasing particulates into the atmosphere. The Firelians must have evolved to require those irritants for proper development, perhaps even for basic metabolic functions. She turned to the security team. "Get the humans food. We need to test the theory." "Better idea," Ethan suggested, reaching slowly into his pocket and pulling out the small bottle of hot sauce. "Why not go straight to the source?" After a brief discussion among the research team, they agreed to introduce a small amount of the sauce into the containment field through a specimen port. Ethan watched as a robotic arm carried a drop of the red liquid toward the infant Firelian, who tracked its movement with laser focus. The moment the sauce was placed on a small dish within reach, the creature darted forward and licked it up with a forked, flame-colored tongue. The effect was immediate and startling. The Firelian scales brightened from copper to a brilliant gold, and the membranous wings on her back fully extended, now dry and strong-looking. She made a trilling sound that somehow conveyed pure delight through their mental connection. "Remarkable," Dr. Vox whispered. Her metabolic readings just stabilized. Whatever was in that sauce, her body was craving it desperately. She looked at Ethan with new respect. "It seems we've been overthinking this problem for 5 centuries. All our advanced techniques." And the answer was a condiment from one of the galaxy's youngest spacefaring species. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. As the researchers rushed to conduct further tests and observations, Ethan found himself the unlikely center of attention. The connection between him and the infant Firelian remained strong, and through it, he sensed not just intelligence, but personality, curiosity, stubbornness, and a fierce will to live that had sustained her through 2,000 years of waiting. Over the next few days, the repository buzzed with excitement. News of the hatching spread throughout the facility and beyond, with delegations from various worlds requesting permission to study the miracle Firelian. Through it all, Ethan found himself increasingly involved, as the creature, now officially named Pura, after the ancient Firelian word for first light, refused to cooperate with anyone else. "It's unprecedented," Dr. Vox explained during a meeting with the repository's governing council. "She appears to have imprinted on the human, establishing a telepathic bond that shouldn't be possible across species. Yet the evidence is undeniable. Could it be that humans share some unexpected genetic or neurological similarity with Firelians?" suggested one council member. "A being composed entirely of flowing liquid contained within a hovering force field." "Unlikely," Dr. Vox replied. "Preliminary comparisons show no significant matches. However, there's another possibility." She displayed a holographic comparison of human brain activity alongside recorded patterns from ancient Firelian artifacts. While physically different, both species appear to process emotional responses through similar neural pathways. It may be that Pura connected with Ethan not because of biological compatibility, but because of emotional resonance. "Emotional resonance," repeated another council member, clearly skeptical. "That sounds suspiciously unscientific, Director." Dr. Vox's scales rippled with mild irritation. "I assure you, it's a documented phenomenon in several telepathic species. The ability to recognize and connect with similar emotional patterns regardless of biological basis. What makes this case extraordinary is the strength of the bond formed and the cross-species nature." As the scientists debated, Ethan spent most of his time in a newly established habitat for Pura, who was growing at an astonishing rate. Just a week after hatching, she had already doubled in size and displayed remarkable cognitive development. Through their mental link, he learned about her species, fragments of genetic memory that surfaced as she matured. The Firelians, it turned out, had been guardians of their volcanic world, not just apex predators as researchers had assumed. They had possessed a complex society with art, philosophy, and a deep connection to the natural energy flows of their planet. They had not developed technology as most species understood it, having no need for tools when their natural abilities allowed them to shape their environment directly. And most surprisingly, they had been aware of the coming supernova. The last surviving adults had placed their eggs in specially constructed chambers deep within the planet's crust, hoping some might survive to carry on their legacy. Pura's egg had been found by archaeological explorers, but according to her fragmented memories, there might be others still hidden, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. This revelation caused a sensation among the scientific community. The idea that more Firelians might exist transformed Pura from a fascinating specimen to the potential savior of an entire species. Expeditions to Firel's remains were hastily organized, with new scanning technologies calibrated to detect the unique energy signature of dormant Firilian eggs. Throughout this flurry of activity, Ethan continued his janitorial duties, though with frequent interruptions to assist with Purra's care. He developed a simple system for communicating with her, a sort of mental shorthand that bridged their different ways of perceiving the world. In return, she shared more of her emerging abilities, including the capacity to generate intense heat from her scales and manipulate energy fields with her mind. One evening, as Ethan sat beside Purra's habitat, sharing his dinner, now always heavily spiced at her insistence, Dr. Vox approached with an unusual hesitancy. "Ethan, may I speak with you?" she asked, her normally confident demeanor subdued. "Sure, Doc," he replied, setting aside his meal. Purra made a small noise of protest, but continued eating her portion, a specially formulated diet supplemented with capsaicin compounds from earth peppers. "The Council has made a decision regarding Purra's future," Dr. Vox began. "As the last known member of her species, with potentially critical information encoded in her genetic memory, they believe she should be transferred to the Galactic Conservation Institute on Meridian Prime." Ethan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Transferred? Why? She's doing great here. The GCI has more resources, more specialists in endangered species rehabilitation. They could give her an entire preserve modeled after what we now know of Firal's ecology." Dr. Vox's tail twitched nervously. It would be the best chance for her species' survival, especially if more eggs are found. "And what about our connection?" Ethan asked, already knowing the answer from Dr. Vox's expression. "The Council believes it's problematic, a dependency that might hinder her natural development." She couldn't quite meet his eyes. "The transfer would include a gradual separation protocol, breaking the telepathic bond over time." Purra, sensing the emotional shift, raised her head and fixed Dr. Vox with an unblinking stare. Through their connection, Ethan felt her comprehension and growing alarm. "She understands what you're saying," Ethan told the director. "And she's not happy about it." Dr. Vox sighed. "I anticipated that. But she's an intelligent being. Surely she can understand this is for the good of her species." Purra's mental response flooded Ethan's mind with such intensity that he gasped. Images of her egg, dormant and alone through centuries of well-meaning but misguided attempts to awaken her. The moment of hatching, triggered not by sophisticated technology, but by the simple combination of familiar chemical compounds and the presence of a mind that resonated with her own. And beneath it all, a fierce certainty. She would not be separated from the being who had ended her long solitude. "I don't think she sees it that way," Ethan said quietly. "To her, the connection between us isn't a dependency. It's what allowed her to survive in the first place." Before Dr. Vox could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The director's comm unit activated automatically. "Director Vox, we have an emergency situation," came the urgent voice of the security chief. "Long-range sensors have detected a scarab harvester ship entering the system. Estimated time to repository orbit, 17 minutes. Dr. Vox's scales paled to an ashen gray. "Initiate defense protocols immediately. Full evacuation of non-essential personnel to the emergency shuttles." She turned to Ethan, her professional composure cracking slightly. "The scarabs, they're a nomadic species that raid scientific outposts for biological specimens. They sell rare species to collectors across the unaligned sectors. And Purra would be the ultimate prize," Ethan realized, instinctively moving closer to the habitat. "Exactly. We need to move her to a secure vault beneath the central hub." Dr. Vox activated another channel on her comm unit. "Prepare containment transport for the Firilian specimen, Priority Alpha." Purra bristled, her scales heating visibly as she picked up on the threat through her connection with Ethan. He felt her mind processing the situation with remarkable speed, accessing genetic memories that provided context he couldn't fully comprehend. "Dr. Vox," he said urgently, "I think she knows something about these scarabs. Or at least, she has some ancestral knowledge about similar threats." The director looked skeptical but motioned for him to continue. The Firelians were guardians, not just predators, Ethan explained, translating the impressions flowing from Purah's mind. They protected their world from something, raiders or invaders that came from the stars. It's part of why they developed their energy manipulation abilities. That contradicts everything we thought we knew about pre-spacefaring civilizations on Firel, Dr. Vox objected. With all due respect, Doc, everything we thought we knew about Firelians has been proven wrong in the last week, Ethan countered. We thought the egg couldn't hatch. We thought telepathic bonds across species were impossible. We thought. He was interrupted by the arrival of a security team with a specialized containment unit. Purah immediately backed away, her wings flaring and claws extending. The temperature in the habitat rose dramatically. She won't go willingly, Ethan warned. And I'm not sure forcing her is a good idea. Dr. Vox hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and the reality of the situation. We don't have time for this. The scarabs will be here in less than 15 minutes, and they'll cut through our defenses like they're nothing. Every specimen in this facility is at risk. Then let her help, Ethan suggested. If her ancestors fought off similar threats, maybe she has abilities we haven't seen yet. She's an infant, barely a week old. A week old with 2,000 years of genetic memory and abilities that are growing by the day, Ethan pointed out. Plus, she's really motivated to protect her home. I can feel it. Through their connection, Purah projected fierce agreement, along with something else, a plan forming in her remarkably advanced mind. Before Dr. Vox could make a decision, the facility shook violently. They're early, she gasped, checking her data tablet. They must have used a dimensional fold to shorten their approach. She turned to the security team. Forget the containment unit. Prepare to defend this section at all costs. As the team moved into position, Ethan opened the habitat's access panel, allowing Purah to climb onto his shoulder. Her weight was substantial now, but he barely noticed as the mental link between them intensified, their thoughts aligning with singular purpose. What are you doing? Dr. Vox demanded. What needs to be done? Ethan replied, surprised by the calm certainty in his voice. Purah has a plan, and I'm part of it. Through the facility's windows, they could see the scarab ship now, a massive, segmented vessel bristling with harvesting appendages and weapon systems. Its outer hull resembled the carapace of the insect it was named after, a disturbing blend of organic and mechanical elements. Already, smaller craft were detaching from the main ship, targeting different sections of the repository. They'll breach the east docking bay first, Dr. Vox predicted grimly. Standard scarab tactics, secure an entry point, then spread through the facility, paralyzing resistance with nerve toxins before collecting their targets. Ethan nodded, this information aligning with what Purah was conveying to him. We need to get to the central atrium. It's the key to her plan. Dr. Vox looked like she wanted to object, but instead gave a curt nod. Security Team Alpha, escort them. The rest of you, defensive positions. They moved swiftly through the corridors of the repository, now mostly deserted as the evacuation proceeded. Through the viewports, Ethan could see emergency shuttles departing, carrying researchers and support staff to safety. The scarab ship loomed ever larger, now directly above the facility. When they reached the central atrium, Purah leapt from Ethan's shoulder and flew to the center of the vast space, hovering on wings that had grown strong enough to support her increasing weight. Through their link, she communicated what she needed, access to the repository's main power core. Dr. Vox, can you expose the primary energy conduits? Ethan asked, pointing to the ceiling where the atrium's power systems were housed. The director hesitated only briefly before entering an authorization code into her tablet. A section of the ceiling retracted, revealing a pulsing column of blue-white energy, the main power distribution node for the entire facility. What is she planning? Dr. Vox asked as Purah flew higher, circling the energy column. Something her ancestors did, Ethan replied, his understanding growing clearer as Purah accessed deeper genetic memories. The Firelians could channel energy, not just generate it, but redirect it, amplify it. She thinks she can use the repository's power to create a defensive field. That's theoretically possible, but it would require precise control over quantum fluctuations that our best engineers can't achieve, Dr. Vox objected. How could an infant, however gifted? She was interrupted by a thunderous explosion that shook the entire facility. Alarm systems blared with new urgency. East docking bay breached, announced the security chief over the comm system. Scarab boarding parties confirmed. All personnel, implement toxin countermeasures. Dr. Vox pulled a small device from her belt and pressed it against her neck scales. Antitoxin injector, she explained, offering a similar device to Ethan. It won't provide complete immunity, but it should prevent full paralysis. As Ethan accepted the injector, Pura made her move. Hovering directly below the power column, she extended her wings to their full span and opened her jaws, releasing a concentrated jet of flame. Not ordinary fire, but a focused beam of energy that connected with the power conduit. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Instead of damaging the power system, Pura's energy beam created a feedback loop, drawing power from the repository's core and channeling it through her body. Her scales began to glow with increasing brightness, shifting from gold to a blinding white. Impossible, whispered Dr. Vox. She's functioning as a living conductor, reorganizing the energy at the quantum level. The security team's comms crackled with frantic reports as Scarab raiders advanced through the facility, easily overcoming the defensive positions with their superior technology and paralytic toxins. They were minutes, perhaps seconds, from reaching the central atrium. Through his mental link with Pura, Ethan felt her gathering the energy, shaping it according to patterns encoded in her DNA. There was pain involved. The power was almost too much for her young body to channel, but also fierce determination and a growing sense of her heritage. This was what Firelians were meant to do: protect, defend, channel the natural energies of their world against threats. And in this moment, the repository had become her world, and Ethan her family. With a sound like thunder contained in a small room, Pura released the gathered energy in a perfectly controlled wave that expanded outward from her position. It passed through Ethan and the others harmlessly, but continued through the walls and structure of the repository. On the security monitors, they watched as the advancing Scarab raiders were caught in the energy wave and simply stopped. Not destroyed, but immobilized, their organic mechanical systems temporarily reconfigured at the quantum level. She's neutralized their technology, Dr. Vox realized, checking the readings on her tablet. Their weapons, their ships, even their armor, it's all inert. Pura descended slowly, clearly exhausted by the effort. Ethan rushed forward to catch her as she glided down, her body temperature much cooler than normal. Through their connection, he sensed her satisfaction mixed with fatigue. The effect is temporary, he told Dr. Vox, translating Pura's thoughts. Maybe 30 minutes before their systems recalibrate. Dr. Vox was already on her comm unit. Security teams, the Scarab technology has been neutralized. Move in and secure all intruders immediately. Engineering, prepare to detach docking clamps from the Scarab vessel on my mark. As the repository's personnel mobilized to take advantage of the unexpected opportunity, Dr. Vox approached Ethan and Pura with newfound respect. It seems I, and the Council, have underestimated both of you, she admitted. That display of energy manipulation from one so young, it's beyond anything we thought possible. Ethan nodded, still cradling Pura, who had curled up against his chest, her eyes half closed in exhaustion. She says it's just the beginning. Firelians continue to develop new abilities throughout their lives. With proper nutrition, he couldn't help a small smile. Including plenty of spicy food, she'll eventually be able to generate and control energy fields without an external power source. Dr. Vox's scales shimmered with what Ethan had come to recognize as excitement. The research possibilities are extraordinary, and if we do locate more eggs. About that, Ethan interrupted. The transfer to the GCI. I'm assuming that's still the plan. The director was silent for a long moment, her gaze moving from Pura to Ethan and back again. Finally, she sighed. I will inform the council that separating you would be not only cruel, but potentially dangerous to Purah's development. The bond you share clearly serves an evolutionary purpose we don't fully understand yet. She paused, then added, however, I suspect they'll still want you both to relocate to a more secure facility, especially if we confirm the existence of additional eggs. Ethan nodded, having expected something along these lines. Through his connection with Purah, he sensed not objection but curiosity about this potential new adventure. I think we'd be open to that, he said, on one condition, which is, I'm tired of pushing a mop. If we're going to help find and hatch more Firelians, I want official status as Purah's primary caretaker and a role in the research team. He smiled slightly, plus a substantial raise. Do you know how expensive it is to import hot sauce from Earth? Dr. Vox's scales rippled with amusement. I believe that can be arranged. She extended a clawed hand. Welcome to the team, Ethan Cole. As Ethan shook her hand, Purah stirred against his chest, sending him a clear mental image. The two of them flying together over a reconstructed landscape that resembled ancient Firel, with more of her kind soaring alongside them. It was a vision of the future, not just survival, but revival. 3 years later, the newly established Firelian Conservation and Research Center on New Firel, a terraformed moon with carefully recreated volcanic conditions, was home to 12 young Firelians, each hatched from eggs recovered from the ruins of their ancestral world. The breakthrough discovery of the capsaicin catalyst had revolutionized xenobiology, earning Dr. Vox the prestigious Galactic Science Medallion. As for Ethan, he'd never returned to janitorial work. Now the head of the Firelian imprinting program, he supervised a team of carefully selected humans who helped the newly hatched Firelians form their critical first bonds. His relationship with Purah, now the size of a small horse and capable of remarkable feats of energy manipulation, remained unique, the strongest cross-species telepathic bond ever documented. On this particular morning, Ethan stood on the observation platform overlooking the caldera habitat, watching as Purah led the younger Firelians in flight exercises. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message from Dr. Vox. We've confirmed it, Ethan. Her voice came through, vibrating with excitement. The deep scans of Sector 7 on original Firel have detected a cache of at least 30 more eggs, protected in a chamber that somehow survived both the supernova and 2 millennia of planetary degradation. We're organizing the recovery operation now. That's fantastic news, Ethan replied, his heart swelling with joy that Purah immediately sensed, causing her to loop in celebration mid-flight. I'll alert the imprinting team to prepare for new arrivals. There's more, Dr. Vox continued. The chamber contains what appears to be an intact data crystal, possibly a record left by the last adult Firelians before the supernova. If we can access it, we might learn not just how they predicted the disaster, but the full extent of their civilization and abilities. After ending the call, Ethan made his way down to the caldera floor, where Purah landed beside him with characteristic grace. Through their bond, he shared the news, feeling her happiness and pride radiate back to him. We did it, girl, he said aloud, running a hand along her warm scales. Your species has a future now. Purah bumped her head against his chest, sharing a memory image that always made him smile. Of a simple human janitor, eating a spicy sandwich in front of an egg that had waited 5 centuries for precisely that moment. Sometimes, Ethan reflected, the greatest scientific breakthroughs didn't require advanced technology or brilliant theories. Sometimes they just needed a ham sandwich, a bag of chips, and a little hot sauce. As if reading his thoughts, which, of course, she was, Purah made the trilling sound that was her version of laughter. Then she crouched, inviting him to climb onto her back for their daily flight around the caldera, a routine they'd established early in her development. As they soared above the artificial volcanoes of New Firel, Ethan realized how far they'd both come from their first meeting in the sterile halls of the repository. He, a directionless janitor who'd left Earth seeking something different. She, the last hope of an ancient species trapped in suspended animation for millennia, both alone in their own ways until chance and spicy food brought them together. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all, and sometimes its most important messages came in the simplest packages, like a bottle of hot sauce labeled Dave's Insanity. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.